G'day groovers, rockers, and in between. This is Vinyl Vibes. I'm your host, Jack Hodgins. Today we are talking with former guitarist of Skyhooks and The Angels, Bob Spencer. Bob has been playing in bands since the early 1970s, with his first band being Finch. In 1977, after the unexpected departure of Red Symons, Bob joined Skyhooks. He is on hit songs by the band such as Party to End All Parties and Women in Uniform. He remained with the group to their breakup in 1980. After some years working on the music production side of things, Bob was yet again called up for service, this time by Red Brewster of The Angels. Bob joined the band in 1986 and remained with The Angels till 1992. Today Bob teaches guitar lessons and recently made his first solo album in 2017. G'day Bob, and welcome to Vinyl Vibes.
Hello.
Let's start off at the beginning. You were born in 57 in Sydney. Do you remember much about your childhood?
I do. I remember lots of stuff. I remember our first house, which was on Bunurong Road, and it's still there. And I remember walking to Maroubra Beach for the first time when I was maybe 3 with my parents. And that's where I fell in love with the surf. Surfing was my first love and still is, really. These days I surf very rarely, partially due to being in the suburbs of Sydney, partially due to my reluctance to fight for waves at the age of 65. Being exposed to music for the first time, I remember the radiogram in our lounge room. This would be in the late 50s, early 60s. This was in Pagewood in Sydney. I remember hearing music come out of the His Master's Voice radiogram, wondering how they got every single band into the radio station to play those songs. I thought, wow, this is magnificent. Every band goes to a building and plays a song.
Yeah.
When you're 4 years old, this is what makes sense to you. So
Yeah.
I have lots of memories. My memories of music around what my parents, particularly my father, listened to, which was Frank Sinatra. So we're Italian, mostly Italian. So of course we listened to Frankie. Some opera, things like the Beatles. I have lots of memories of music. I could talk about that for hours. What's interesting about my formative years listening to music, lots of that music still matters to me and still influences how I play. I didn't know that. I didn't know where the music I listened to came from when I was 5, but now I know that a lot of it was Jamaican. I didn't know that back. I'm not like a fan of reggae. I like reggae. I like lots of things, but I'm not a dedicated. But lots of things impressed me, or they meant something to me when I was a kid, and they still do. We listened to when we were 5 still matter when we're 65.
Your first guitar was a 50s Telecaster. I think you bought it off the trading post for like $35. I mean, what was that like to play?
With an amp.
Yeah, with an amp, yep.
It was, I now know it was a very early 60s Telecaster. It was just a lump of wood with strings. Back then, these things didn't have the same weight as they do now. It was just a guitar. It was a nice guitar. Sounded pretty good, I think. And very rarely I'll hear something from those years that I played on, and I think that's a pretty good guitar sound. But it wasn't like, they were just guitars. They were lumps of wood with strings on them. We have a very romantic view of those vintages now. We didn't have that view back then. It was just a guitar. So my dad saw an electric guitar in the trading post. It came with an amplifier and it was $35, so we bought it.
Yeah.
But that was par for the course back then. That guitar now would be worth, if it were in good condition, it would be worth, I don't know, 60 grand or 40 grand. I don't really know. I don't keep up. Stupid amount of money. It's unrealistic. It's just, they're guitars. I don't have that. I'm not really impressed by the vintage of a guitar. I've played a lot of old guitars, and I have friends who collect very serious guitars, and they all surprisingly sound like guitars.
I know, right?
So, I don't really have a thing. There's the romantic side. So when I see, for example, or I play a 58 or 59 Les Paul, it means something to me because my favorite guitar players played them. but not because I think they're great guitars. It's just that my favourite players played them, and they played them because their favourite players played them. So
Yeah.
Freddie King played a Les Paul, so Eric Clapton played a Les Paul, so Paul Kossoff played a Les Paul, so I played a Les Paul.
Formed your first band when you were 15, Finch, and in 70, I think it was 77, you joined the Skyhooks. How did you get from Finch to Skyhooks?
Okay, well, one thing, I didn't form Finch. Finch was an entity called Dillwater. I often get this wrong, before I joined. So I joined a unit, and then we changed the name to Finch. The connection with Skyhooks is that Finch did some Skyhooks supports in and around Sydney, and that's when I met them. I formed, in particular, a friendship with Greg McCainch, and Greg and I kept in contact for a couple of years, and we would write to each other or send each other postcards, or we would call if we were in town, or we might go to the same gig, or he'd come to see my band, I'd go to see his band. So we had a friendship. One day, out of the blue and completely unexpectedly, Greg, this is the short story, Greg called. I called him back. I thought it was just a regular catch up kind of phone call. Do you want to join Skyhooks? Red has left. Didn't see that coming at all. And that kind of did my head in a bit. It prompted me to decide to leave Finch, regardless of whether I accepted the offer or not, because it seemed to me that Finch were going around in circles in Melbourne. We had the loveliest manager, Brian Todd, but he didn't have maybe the relationships necessary to get ahead down there, and we didn't have a record company. So things were difficult. So we were going around in circles. We believed that we were a good band, and we were a good band. I hear recordings still and think we're actually pretty good, but we didn't have songs. We had bits and pieces of good music and bits and pieces of good melodies, but we didn't have songs. We had a band that performed bits and pieces of music well, but we didn't have songs. And we didn't concentrate on songs, by the way, which was a massive mistake that we made, which we couldn't see at the time, I don't think. Anyway, back to Greg. So I had a good relationship with Greg. Greg called out of the blue, do you want to join the band? Yeah, all right. So I joined the band. That was that. It was all pretty, I guess, painless. I didn't ask to join the band.
Yeah, look, you mentioned your friendship with Greg there, and I'm guessing that would have meant when you joined the Skyhooks, you got along with everyone else pretty quickly. You felt at home in the band pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, completely at home. They respected me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been asked to join the band. I respected them. I had always thought that they were a magnificent band. They were the first Australian band I saw that scared me, that really freaked me out. Oh my God, this is how a good band should be. I had seen every successful Australian band, I guess. I'd seen Billy Thorpe, seen Sherbet a number of times. We had played with Sherbet a number of times. Jeff St. John, Stevie Wright, whatever the big bands were at the time, I'd seen them all. I hadn't seen anything like Skyhooks. The first gig that I saw was under the Harbour Bridge, the pylons at the Harbour Bridge in Sydney. And I was completely gobsmacked. It was like seeing another band from an alternate universe. They were so good. They were so together. They were so on point. They were so tidy, but also had a looseness, a lot of latitude, particularly in the way Shirl operated. It completely blew me away, but I never thought that I would be in that band. No, that's what's always happened. I never really had a plan to join a band, or I didn't have a goal. Some people do that, and that's great, but I never had that. An incredibly informative experience for me. I saw firsthand how a band should operate, and how a successful band that had an objective overview of what the band and the brand meant, how that manifested. I hadn't seen that before. I was in a band that just tried to play well, and that was the majority of it. We wanted to be a good band that played well, and that's great, but that's like this much
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the whole picture. The big picture, it is much broader than much deeper than just playing well. We thought it was about playing well, and that's lovely, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, when you kind of did join, I mean, Red Symons guitar parts, I mean, did you pick those up by ear, or did someone show you how to play them, or like, yeah, how did that all work out?
No, I just had a cassette of the songs, and I had put a cassette on and learnt the parts. Occasionally, I might get something wrong. Like occasionally, I might think it was a Red part, but it was a Starkey part. That's because on record it wasn't always left and right, and because they used to overdo everything. Those albums with Ross, there's just so much stuff piled on. Sometimes it was difficult to ascertain who was doing what, in which case that would come up at rehearsal. Starkey would say, "Oh no, that's my part." He may or may not know Red's part. Generally, he didn't know Red's part, but Greg would know Red's part because Greg wrote them. So there was a bit of that. Oh no, I don't think that's your part. I think your part is higher up the neck or something, and they'd be, "Oh, okay," but it wasn't brain surgery. Certainly, concentration was necessary and focus, which I found challenging. But I'm that kind of guy. I like to be challenged like that. Predominantly by ear. I have a very good ear when it comes to picking things up, and they were good parts to play. They were not like the parts that I had played previously, having grown up on Humble Pie and Free and Zeppelin and The Who and the Small Faces, Doug Ford from the Master's Apprentices. Those parts are quite different from the parts that we played in Skyhooks. So it was very challenging. And occasionally I would be quite out of my comfort zone playing a fiddly little part that I had previously had no need to play. It was really, really interesting. Yeah, it was a great learning experience.
And look, you mentioned a little bit about the production side of things on some of those Skyhook records, and that kind of brings me to, like, do you remember much about the recording of Party to End All Parties? Like, I think that was the first single that they released with you in the band.
Yeah, we played together as a band, recorded as a band. I'm still not happy with the solo. They wanted something fast and impressive at the end of the solo. And to this day, I hear those licks and I think, oh, I didn't want it. But anyway, no, it was great. It was a really great experience. Very professional, very professional. Everybody sounded terrific. The parts went together, as McCainch songs tend to do, very well. Good studio, good engineering. Everyone's supportive of everybody else. They were all extremely supportive of me. It was a great experience. From there, we went into the Guilty album, which is, I think, wonderful. To this day, I think it's a great album.
Having been a part of the music industry for so long, and, you've seen the tape machines go to, like, the more digital side of things. I mean, how do you look back on, like, those days of tape and analog kind of medias?
I look back on it fondly, not because of tape, but I look back on it fondly because we played and worked together, bounced off each other. There'd be suggestions going on, and hey, how about we try this? Or no, don't do that, it sucks. Or that's really cool, maybe we should do that. That's what I miss. The analog thing, I'm not fussed about. Maybe that's a separate conversation. I do love the sound of tape because it's gooey and it glues everything together, and it's gooey and there are harmonics and distortion and all that, and I like that. Predominantly, the great thing about those days for me was that we played together. We rehearsed together. I also practiced at home, which I still do, individually. But we rehearsed together. The songs came together, and we recorded together. We didn't just put down a drum track and then 3 weeks later someone's in Brisbane and puts down which is how we do things these days, which has its merits. But I miss the days of recording as a band. I miss being in a band that was looking to the future and in moving forward. I miss that. And the Hooks were always about moving forward. Yeah, what we're going to do in the future. I loved that about Skyhooks. I loved it. that
Yeah.
looking to the future and moving forward.
In your time in the Skyhooks, you played on the 100th episode of Countdown. I mean, Countdown, massive Australian TV show back in the day. Do you remember much about that episode?
I remember Starkey and I having a sand shoe on a mic stand instead of a microphone and singing into that. Did that ever make it to film?
I'm not sure. It might have. I have to have a look over it.
I don't remember that really. I guess if I watched it, it might pique my memory. But yeah, I don't watch. I watch that stuff if it's, I guess, if it's relevant to what I'm doing
Yeah.
right now. I have a bass guitar student who likes to look at those songs in detail. So occasionally, while we're sitting here, we'll pull up something on YouTube that I would, something that I was on YouTube. But other than that, I don't go searching for things. So I don't really have a memory of that. I think I remember doing Party at Countdown because that would make sense, wouldn't it, that we did it at Countdown? I don't remember anything about a 100th episode. Or I was probably more interested in chasing girls,
Yeah.
as one does when one is 19 years old. So yeah, I don't really remember. They were big day. Countdown was a big day. Was Countdown on a Sunday? Was it
That would sound about a weekend, surely. Yeah.
Sunday? So that meant that you played the night before, and I can't sleep after a gig, so I would have gone out clubbing or watching another band or gone out for a blow, got to sleep at 2 or 3, and then Countdown was a really early start. I don't remember the exact time, but you were expected to be at the studios at like 8 o'clock or something, and then you were there all day. So you're sleep deprived, you do the rehearsals. They practiced all these camera shots, which never happened in the evening because the audience was now on the floor, so the dollies couldn't move and whatever. And there'd be that horrible greasy smoke. So you rehearsed, you did the shoot, and then you went from there to a gig of your own. I can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday that we filmed. We probably played the night before, get up early, work all day, and then go to another gig.
Yeah.
It was a big day. It was also fun. At Countdown, you got to hang out with your other mates who were on the show. So you go from dressing room to dressing room and have a bit of a chat. And in my case, occasionally I get to see some of my heroes. Sometimes they were at Countdown as well.
You guys were touring non-stop pretty much in 77. I think you toured 3 times nationally across Australia. Do you remember much about those that tour, like all those 3 kind of?
Oh, lots of great memories of really happening gigs. I remember a lot of really good gigs. So the first gig that we did in Sydney, which was at a theatre, the name of which escapes me now, but it was the State Theatre or something like that, or Capitol, or I can't remember. The band was freaking on fire. I have cassettes of those gigs, and I put them. Have I put them to digital? I don't think I've put them. I should do that, shouldn't I?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, and the band is playing really, really well. We were really tight. We rehearsed very seriously. So we rehearsed 5 days a week from 10 till 5 every day. So it was very serious. And I guess that's not hard to imagine given the complexity of the parts. We worked very, very hard on that stuff. It wasn't like, see you at rehearsal and have a beer and then have a bit of a blow and, that'll be good enough. There was never, and that frustrates me if I ever hear that, it'll be fine on the night. No, it won't. It won't be fine unless you get it right now. Skyhooks were very, very, very dedicated. And obviously there was a budget to support rehearsing every day and still everyone being paid wages and, all that. Very supportive. A big family of people who took care of each other. Again, in Finch, God bless our little cotton socks, we didn't really have that overview of what does the brand need as opposed to what I personally need. And maybe they align. Well, hopefully they align some of the time. There's a different overview. And I hadn't been exposed to that before. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, and you mentioned before a little bit about the group's album Guilty Until Proven Insane, and I did some reading on it, and I think you brought in American producer Eddie Lanetti, and I was just thinking, like, did having that American kind of influence on that record, did that change the sound in any way relative to had it been produced by an Australian producer?
I think so. I think it's largely down to experience. I do often think about the differences between the 1960s, 70s, 80s Australia and the rest of the world. And I think a lot of it just comes down to the amount of time that you spent on your tools, the amount of experience that you had, not necessarily people being better or worse, but experience. So Eddie came to the band with a lot of experience, that he was a producer. Ross was a producer, but he was also a songwriter and in a band, a couple of bands. Eddie was a producer, and he came to the band. I wouldn't call it an American overview or point of view, but he came to the band with a different point of view because he didn't really know us. He didn't know us personally. He didn't understand the Australian culture. So his thing was, we make a great record. So he didn't have the baggage. He didn't really care about who we were. Nobodies. Skyhooks, it's like, what's that? Big here, meaningless in the rest of the world, completely meaningless in America. So he didn't really care about that stuff. He was just extremely focused on a really good record. He just wanted a really good record. And I think he and we achieved that. To this day, I think that is a bloody good album. Really good album. I think it's one of the great Australian albums. Yes, I was part of it, but I'm also able to see it objectively. Yeah. So I don't think so much an American point of view. I don't listen to those songs and think, oh, that's an American idea and that's an American mix on the hi-hat or whatever. I just think it's a tidy record where the parts came together really well. There was less hash on it than there was with Ross. The albums that Ross did, undeniably great albums, but they are crowded with sound.
Yep.
I love them. I think they're great records. They are too crowded for my ears. There's just too much going on. And Eddie had a more stripped down way of approaching the songs, which I thought was great. I thought it allowed each individual player to shine a little bit more rather than getting buried.
Yep. Yeah.
Of course, a Skyhooks fan might argue that and say, no, I felt that about the first couple of albums. That's great. That's just a personal opinion.
In Australia, everyone pretty much knows Skyhooks. You say it to anyone, they go, yep, we know Skyhooks. And if you mentioned, like, if you go to America, like, no one's really heard. I mean, why do you think that is so for Australian music? I mean, in that era, like, we had such great artists, but yet only a few really made it in the States or, overseas. I mean, why is that so?
In the case of Skyhooks, I think Americans would have been very confused as to what the band was. A singer with a girl's name, no uniform haircuts, so short hair, long hair. The band had costumes, sort of looked like the Tubes, but didn't sound like the Tubes. Yet some things were kind of poppy, almost like Cheap Trick, but they didn't look like Cheap Trick. I think the Americans were just confused. There was, of course, a mention of Australian cities and towns.
Yep.
Which would not have resonated for Americans. Not that really matters all that much, I guess. I think the Americans would have been confused by it. There's also the issue of record company support here. I may be wrong, but I don't think Mushroom have had any success overseas apart from Kylie. And I think the Kylie success was really not about Mushroom. It was about Neighbours. So if we look at the other Mushroom acts, Mushroom had the Dingoes, which in my opinion, and I don't like to use the word should, but I will, in my opinion, the Dingoes should have been absolutely massive globally. I would suspect, having heard some stories, I think that Mushroom's lack of expertise and knowledge and connections in America may have contributed to the Dingoes' lack of success. But I don't know. Maybe Chris Stockley will call you and go, Bob's an idiot. He doesn't. I don't know. I don't think there was anything wrong with Australian music or Australian bands, but we just did not have the expertise. We didn't have the connections. We're a tiny little pond of a few million people.
After that album, Hot for the Orient came out, and I know you're not, from listening to interviews with you, you're not a fan of that album, and I can kind of get that. I mean, Did you? But at the time, like when you kind of started recording that album, did you know that it was going to be the last Skyhooks album? Like, was there that feeling?
Yeah, I definitely felt like it. I felt that we'd lost our way. And I was too stupid and drinking far too much to really have a great idea of what to do. I was, I was not in a good way at that time. I was 21 and drinking a lot. I was frustrated. I wasn't able to articulate what I was thinking, but I felt that things were kind of at the end. And it had nothing, it wasn't really Tony. I love Tony. I think Tony is a beautiful human being, and I very much appreciate having been in the band with him. The band had, I think, lost its way. I've never really spoken with Greg. In fact, I've never spoken with Greg about this in detail, but it felt like the band, everybody in the band was we're all feeling a bit lost here. And I wasn't confident about that record at all. I wasn't confident about the songs. I don't even like the sound of it, I don't think. But again, I don't listen to it. I think there were some bits of good playing on it. I think having Starkey sing was a little odd for Keep the Junk in America. So the album didn't sound cohesive. It didn't sound like a unified force. It didn't sound like we had a direction, because it didn't seem to have a direction to me. So I was very, very, very depressed about that whole thing. I remember feeling that we were on the verge of breaking up that whole time.
Soon after that album, the Skyhooks kind of, break up, and you kind of go into a full-time recording engineer. I mean, what was that transition like for you? Was that like an easy transition, coming from a rock and roll kind of lifestyle to, yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, I've always been fascinated, and I still am, with audio. I didn't go straight into engineering. The first thing I did was played with John English, and then from John English, I went into engineering at a studio in Sydney and Newcastle. And I loved it. I still love audio engineering. I love it. I'm fascinated with sound and perceived sound and what it does to us. I find it fascinating to this day. Fascinated with what was going on and how things got down onto tape and the desk and microphones and positioning. And I was fascinated. That's what I did for a while. Well, it must have been a few years. And then, I had another band. So I formed a band with Clifford Hode who lives in the Gold Coast, and we formed a band called Kings of the Sun. Not Kings of the Sun. It was called the Young Lions. And when I left that band, it became Kings of the Sun. And I had known particularly Rick Brewster since I was in Finch. The Young Lions did some Angels supports, and I had been in semi-regular contact with Rick as a friend. I was engineering at a studio in Sydney. So I called Rick just to let him know that I was engineering at a studio, and if they wanted to do any demo recordings, I'd be happy to do those, and I could get a really good rate for demos, not for finished product. I wasn't at that stage, but for demos. And I think we spoke about the new amplifiers that we liked, which would have been pretty normal. And at some stage I said, how's it going with you guys? And he said, John just left. I said, well, if you need a guitar player, give me a call. And the next thing, I was in the band.
Yeah.
It was just as simple as that. I would never have expected to join the Angels. It's not really music that I listen to, like that sort of rock. And I never in a million years thought that John would leave the band.
I mean, the first record I think you did with them was Howling, I think. And do you remember much about the recording of that album? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being very happy with working with Steve Brown, the producer, and watching the way he engineered and got things down on tape. How the processing that he did, audio processing, he was good fun to be around, and I have a lot of good memories about that album. Yeah, it was great. It was a great experience. Yeah, being in a big, expensive, very expensive studio of months at a time. A lot of money being spent, which we then had to repay because it came out of our money. But it was a great experience. Yeah.
There was a great cover of "We Got to Get Out of This Place" on that album, and how did that kind of come to be? Whose idea was that? I
can't remember.
Okay.
I honestly cannot remember who suggested it.
In saying that, then, I mean, what do you think kind of made that? Because I mean, it's one of the most popular Angels songs. I mean, people love that version of that song. I mean, what Well, why was it so successful when the band did it? Because, I mean, covering a classic like that can always be a bit of a slippery slope. But, I mean, I think that Angels' version of that song is at least as good or not or even better than the original. I mean, why was the band's version of that song so successful?
I don't know. I think that it sounds great. The mix was by Bill Price, who is no slouch. I think that sonically it sounds really good. I think the lyric was so up Doc's alley. The key that the song is in, the notes that are being sung, there's nothing high. I think that it just lent itself so well to Doc's character. I hear Doc singing that and I think, man, this is just fantastic. I really do. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think that Eddie Rayner's keyboards are brilliant. So Eddie was around for much of that, and he's just fantastic. The guy's a genius. We played really well. Great mix. Sounds really good. Doc's delivery, the lyrics, something worked. I still hear it on the radio. I quite often get in the car. Somebody, I won't mention who, puts the radio on Triple M, which I would never do. And occasionally we got to get out of this place. And it still sounds great.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it.
In comparison with the Skyhooks and in comparison with the Angels, I mean, you got to be more involved in the songwriting process with the Angels. I mean, was that great for you?
Yeah, it was. I had never stopped writing. I've been writing since I was a child, since Finch. I didn't present anything while I was in Skyhooks. I guess there could have been the opportunity for Greg and I to write together. But again, I was so busy drinking and chasing girls that I didn't really work on this stuff. Silly me. I had a catalogue of bits of music. I mean, hundreds, and I still do, probably thousands of bits of music. So with the Angels, I guess Rick would have said, "Have you got anything?" And I stayed home on my little 4-track machine and whipped up some stuff and presented it to the band, and the band accepted it. So Rick loved Don't Waste My Time, which wasn't called Don't Waste My Time, of course. It was just the music. He wrote the lyrics to it and off we went. And I'm still very happy with that. And then by the time of the next album, Beyond Salvation, I had presented the band with a lot of material, and everything I presented, they accepted. But I was also careful about what I presented to the band. I was very conscious about giving the band music that I thought suited the band. So it's about the context.
Yep. Yeah.
It's just about, I've got this great piece of music. No one can play it, but let's do it anyway. It wasn't like that. I was very, very aware of the setting, of the people, of the players' idiosyncrasies, or foibles, or their attributes, positives, negatives. So I was careful about that. I didn't just carte blanche throw everything I had at the band. I was careful. I'm pretty sure the band could do this, so here's that, and they'd go, yeah. But I was careful about it. But when I say careful, I don't mean I was plotting. It was just, what can the band do?
Yep.
What do I think would help the band move forward and might sound good on the next record?
You left the Angels in around 91, and you had a Time and Rose Tattoo 2017 to 2022. But what I want to draw attention to, of course, is your solo album, Saints and Murderers. I mean, how did that come to be?
So I never stopped writing. I really do have probably thousands of bits of music, which are a nightmare to catalogue. So I thought I'll make a rock pop record. So I approached Laura Davidson, a marvelous singer in Melbourne, lovely, lovely girl. I met her through Starkey, actually. She now does the Skyhooks gigs with Starkey. Well, it's not called Skyhooks, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I met Laura and I thought, what a lovely girl. And we just really hit it off. And I said, I've got all these bits of music. Are you interested in writing and recording? And she said, yeah. And it didn't really work out for a few reasons. Nothing personal. We're lovely. Still get along very, very well. But because I'd already initiated the writing, I had all these songs, no one to sing them. And I had lots of bits of lyrics. So I thought, I'll just sing. So I did, which was all get out, because I'd never really sung before. So I put together what I thought would be a body of work, not too extreme on either end, you know. And there are some things on that that I really like, and there are some things that I think I probably wouldn't do that again. But I did it. Those songs are chosen for a reason because I thought that they would all kind of go together and be kind of called a rock record.
I was looking at on your website, and I love how you've presented your music on your website, because I think that's great that, you know, because it's not on Spotify, it's just on your website, right? Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure I was right on that, because I think that's like an amazing like way to go about it. I think, you know, instead of putting it up on Spotify like everyone else, I think that's a great different way for bands to go about allowing people to stream their music, but on their website. Like, is that like, yeah, where did you get that idea from? Like, because I haven't seen that before.
It may have just come from what's the point of being on Spotify? You know, it's just more stuff to maintain. I don't remember. At some stage I went, I think I'm going to nuke that. So I did. So people can buy, you know, you can buy the stuff from my website, and occasionally a few cents trickles through from someone buying something, and that's lovely. In all honesty, I don't do much to promote it because I'm always thinking about what I'm going to do next. So when I've done terrible business, so I did the album, then I go, oh yeah, I've done an album, what am I going to do next? Yeah. But I think there are some good bits of it. Very challenging singing properly for the first time in my life. It was very challenging, and I'm glad I got the songs out.
Just before we go, I just wanted to, just for those listeners out there, you've mentioned a few times that you do guitar lessons. I mean, where are those, like, do you have openings if any of the listeners want to, you know, do a guitar lesson?
Yeah, sure. If they just contact me through my website, and we'll go from there. What I do with a potential student is I first have a phone consultation, 15, 20 minutes on the phone. So we can both know that I'm able to help them, because I have no interest in trying to get money off people if I can't help them. So the first thing is contact me through the website. We'll have a chat about where you're at, where you've been, where you'd like to go, and whether I can help you or not.
Well, Bob, it's been absolutely wonderful talking with you. And thank you so much for making the time.
I've got to say that this has been a really good interview.
That was former guitarist of Skyhooks and the Angels, Bob Spencer. To check out Bob's solo music or to inquire about guitar lessons, head to his website at bobspencer.com.au. Remember to share this episode with other music fans. And if you really enjoyed this edition, let us know. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Vinyl Vibes. And to all you music lovers out there, stay groovy.